Morning. I'm all about fairness, maybe because I'm a Libra, who knows? But I think it's very, very important to demonstrate um, if we have a problem and the problem happens to be sexual predation or something, or addiction or drug abuse or whatever the problem is, that, one of the reasons we don't get to the crux of it is because we're not honest and we don't see all the elements. We focus in one area, we make one group of people the bad guys, and that's not really what we ought to do. So we are told by the police that sexual predation is terrible by the other out there. But they do their part too, don't they? I want you to see here in this piece is once again the people pointing the finger are some of the worst abusers. In the past, I've talked about vigilantes trying to deflect from their own abuse, but increasingly I've been talking about police because police will point to somebody like me, for example, as they've done with this site and said, oh, he's just trying to deflect from what he did. I'm very open about what I didn't do. I am happy to show all my evidence. I've shown my work on this channel as much as is conceivable. And where I have not shown it, I've had very good reasons not to do it. And I've still offered to show it to people if they will come out of the closet, if they will come from behind their hidden barriers, if they will present themselves and identification so I know who they are. We can sit down face to face across the kitchen table and go through it. I would ask that it be filmed. I want to see their reaction. And yes, I have an ulterior motive. I want to see the look on their faces when they realize they've been wrong all along. And I will solicit their apology to see what happens. Because stigma, folks, is very damaging. And one thing that helps to reverse it is when people realize the damage that they're doing. The police have every reason to be fearful of the stigma too, but they have the badge, they have the power, they have the office, and they have largely the public behind them, who seems to not know that some of the worst offenders, some of the people who deserve the stigma most of all, are police. And what do? Well, they do exactly what they claim you and I, who might be under the stigma of the so-called sex offense, they are exactly worse, or at least as bad as those who have that stigma, and they do exactly what the rest do. They run and hide. Nobody wants that. I don't want to put this out there. I don't want to do this video right now. It took me 2 years or 3 years or more to even decide I'm going to do a channel on YouTube because things having to do with technology and stuff, I naturally have an aversion to. You don't know how difficult it is for me to sit here and look at this camera and prepare something like this. But here I am. So I want you to see some of these noble people. But first, I'm going to share with you at. Hopefully, you see it here. This is something that was run out of Bowling Green State University in Ohio. I've talked about it before. It's virtually defunct, but it still has a lot of important information. I don't think that they have been adding to it. I don't think they had the funding to continue. See Bowling Green State University, but you can search by crimes of the police and you can see a very long list of crimes. Well, let's go down here to sex offenses. And we can go down here and you notice how police have been involved with all of these different sex offenses. But let's focus on this one, online solicitation of a child, which is something that they do that they often charge people like me for. They claimed I solicited, they claim many people solicited, and we contend and have demonstrated numerous times how they are the ones creating the crime. Well, not here. They're not creating the crime against themselves. And you can just see some of the dates that these are 20-year-old cases a lot of times. And you can see what department they were in. You can see when it occurred. And we can just go in the middle of this and show you We're at 27 different pages, folks. 27 different pages of these. Here's one out of Scotts Bluff, Nebraska, which is kind of in the middle of the nowhere. Let's look at this particular person. They were 24 years of age. They just started with the police force, male, non-Hispanic, non-Black, probably white. And they were with the Nebraska State Patrol in Lancaster County in the city of Lincoln, which I lived in from the years 1990 to 1992. And they said it was simple assault, sex related, violence related, off duty. This crime was committed by the officer in their individual capacity. So they weren't wearing their uniform at the time. And the Nebraska State Patrol, the officer's employer, arrested them. And it tells you a little bit about them. They were convicted of a felony. He pled guilty. He received 576 months in prison. 560. So what is that? That's let's see, 12 months in a year. That's 20 years, probably. 20, was that 30 years? Sounds like it's more like 30 or 40 years. He's probably still in prison. We don't know what the person did, but we do know the victim was 15. Now we are assuming that this is a actual child. And however, we do know that with the proactive stings, there's the statute says convicted of a crime against a child, but there may not actually be a child. And in the proactive stings, overwhelmingly, there is no child. And overwhelmingly, the arrests made are for the proactive stings. So that just gives you one idea of what actually is available. You could certainly look at gambling offenses, drunk driving offenses, assault, larceny, offenses against organizations, and then, of course, all the very many sex offenses. And remember, the online sex solicitation of a child went out 27 pages. Okay? Forcible fondling. How far does that go out? You get the idea, folks. There are lots and lots and lots of these that go out. This one goes out 111 pages. Okay. My point is police commit a lot of crimes. A lot of crimes they commit. Tons and tons of crimes. And yet they're the ones pointing the finger at you and me. They commit probably, and I'd have to look this up, I'm catching myself, but probably more crimes per capita than the general population does. And yet, we don't hear about them very much. Why don't we? Well, one of the reasons is exactly what they accuse people like me of, hiding it. Oh, we got to go after you. You're hiding your criminality. You're hiding it. Okay. Yeah, it could be that they're hiding it. And in fact, over and over again, that's just what we find, that the police do it over and over and over again. Here's something sent to me by somebody in Cage. Why cops under investigation keep getting new badges? So what it appears is that a police officer, when they're run out of one place, very often don't end up on something like the Bowling Green State University Henry Wallace database. They kind of get able to resign, move along and hush, hush, we won't say too much. And this is why something worse happens. I did a story last year, the year before, of a young man with mental problems who was run out of the Virginia State Patrol. And what did he do? He went down the street into a different county and he ended up becoming a sheriff's deputy. He also went online shortly thereafter and pretended, because he was young looking, pretended to be an 18-year-old boy interested in a girl out in California. He drove out to California to spend the weekend, met her family. They loved this young man, told him he was a police officer and everything. That was exciting. Watched football with the grandfather and the father. And then when they were all done, he decided that the girl would come with him, and she didn't really want to. So he killed her entire family and kidnapped her anyway. When he was cornered by law enforcement, he committed suicide and, of course, traumatized this 17-year-old girl. This is what happens when you don't police your own. Now, this is an extreme example, and unlike the police, I will not have you believe that one extreme example like Jacob Wetterling or Adam Walsh colors the whole, because in fact, that's not the case. Although, again, because it's a smaller sample size, it's entirely possible that police commit more of these crimes per capita than the general public. Certainly that's the case. But I want you to see just what police do with their own and how the public is blissfully aware of what's going on.
Did you get a sense of these larger departments having a problem with this because they're flushing their bad apple?
Which suggests that that wasn't being done before. It was not being done consistently.
Resign, relocate, rebadge, and whatever you were being investigated for stays hidden from the public. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Transfer Portal, where a red flag can apparently double as a resume highlight. WRAL Investigates found officers facing serious criminal charges who had previously moved from larger agencies to smaller departments. In 2 of the featured cases, the officers resigned from their previous departments while under investigation. So what did the next department know, and why was another badge issued?
These former or suspended officers have a lot in common. They're facing charges for breaking the law, and they worked their way from a larger city or county department down to a smaller one. There's Chad Penland, arrested this week and charged with statutory sex offense with a minor. Prior to joining Wake Med Campus Police, Penland was an officer with the Morrisville Police Department. Peter Blake worked at Benson Police. In April, he was charged with forcible rape, kidnapping, burglary, and involuntary sexual servitude. Before Benson PD, he resigned from Raleigh Police while under investigation.
Put your hands behind your back.
And Mark Oakley, a former Warrenton police officer indicted last year for allegedly using a taser on multiple people without justification. He's also facing a federal lawsuit. Before working in Warrenton, he resigned while under investigation from Roanoke Rapids Police. Officers can resign while under an internal investigation in North Carolina. Why they were under investigation is not public record.
Now, to be clear, these are charges, not convictions, and WRAL did not say Penland left Morrisville under investigation. But Blake and Oakley are different. Both left larger departments with investigations still pending, then surfaced at smaller agencies with new badges. What were they being investigated for? We don't know because the public isn't allowed to see that. Maybe it was something.
Isn't that great? So the police shield themselves from any kind of scrutiny, even when they've been under investigation for wrongdoing, even after the wrongdoing comes to light. That doesn't sound like serving the public. That doesn't sound like a thin blue line of protection. What that sounds like is collusion and criminality, hiding and protecting their own while pointing the finger out there. And that is something that undermines public confidence.
Something minor. Or maybe it was exactly the kind of warning the next police chief needed to see. That's the problem with keeping everything secret. The public is left guessing while the officer keeps policing. Apparently, the investigation is confidential, but the risk is public.
Sources tell WRAL the reason that small departments end up with the so-called bad apples of law enforcement comes down to 3 things: the hiring officers' time and resources, their level of training and background checks, and the pressure to fill the position. This is the form that law enforcement has to fill out if they leave any job in the state for any reason. And if they leave under investigation, they have to explain why on page 2.
So the state already has an early warning system. The officer checks a box, explains why the investigation existed, and submits the form. A future hiring agency can see that the officer left under investigation. So this is not an invisible warning sign problem. The warning sign has paperwork, a checkbox, and its own page number. Somebody just has to perform the dangerous tactical maneuver known as reading page 2.
A lot of times, these bigger agencies, to protect the officers' personnel and all their data from getting out, they'll say, hey, Benson, I don't want to send the personnel file of this officer on email. So why don't you come up? We'll put you in a conference room. You can sit down with the file for as long as you want. You got it. And take the notes and stuff, but the file stays here. Well, Benson, in this, hypothetical scenario, says, yeah, I don't have 2 days to send an officer up to Raleigh to go through a personnel file of somebody who's been there for 20 years. So can you give me the highlights? And they only get this much of this much. And that is a pattern that we've been hearing is
And this isn't just happening in North Carolina, folks. We've heard about it as far north as Alaska and the Arctic Circle, how they hire felons up there to do the policing because felons will live there and many police with their families do not want to. And so you're in this awkward position where the law breakers are the lawmen themselves.
the big problem for these smaller departments.
Perfect. The agency deciding whether to give someone a gun, arrest powers, and access to confidential databases might receive the highlights. Not the complete employment history, and not necessarily every internal investigation. Just the law enforcement version of a movie trailer. Carefully selected scenes, no spoilers, and no guarantee that the misconduct subplot made the final cut. If secure transmission is the problem, North Carolina has had decades to create a secure statewide system. Instead, the solution is apparently, come visit our conference room whenever your understaffed department finds 2 free days.
And the agency either doesn't catch on the background investigation what the prior problems were, or does catch them and is just under so much pressure to kind of complete their staffing with such a small number of interested applicants that they're willing to take a chance on an officer that a larger agency might not.
Did you catch?
So I'm going to stop it there. I will post this down below. You get to see half of it, but it just gives you an idea of exactly the sort of problem that we have. How are we going to be honest when we have the people who supposedly are enforcing the law are pointing their finger at people like me, at people like, others who, by the way, if you saw those charges, are much more severe than what any of us on the proactive stings have ever gotten, even if they're true. For the police here, they are able to hide, they're able to defend each other, they protect one another. And in a way, you can understand that, folks. People will do that. They will protect themselves. They will try to, rationalize it and say that, well, we by and large do good work. There's a couple of bad apples, but that doesn't justify destroying the entire thing. Totally get that. I totally agree with you. It doesn't justify it. And yet it does somehow justify destroying other people's lives who could be productive in their field, like teachers, custodians, counselors, psychologists, and doctors, lawyers, others who are destroyed by the police and are told that that person is the worst of the worst. Why then doesn't it work the exact same way for them?